morning, this is Eric from Jitsu. I'm on a couple of different Facebook forums for martial artists, and one of them is an online community for folks who attend a certain online dojo. And one of the questions that sometimes comes up is about parents helping their kids with learning techniques while not actually being in a physical dojo. This can be a little tricky. Even if you're a parent and you take your child to a physical dojo, maybe you can only go one time a week, or maybe your kid just wants to, do some supplemental training at the house and asks you for help. And if you have no martial arts experience, then this video is really for you. I'm going to quote a wonderful sensei that I follow on YouTube, Sensei Che from the Goju Karate Center. He always likes to say, "Do as your sensei says." I think that's the best advice ever. Anything that I say is should be supplemental to what you're learning. So do as your sensei says, do as your professor says, do as your coach says. Take my advice as just supplemental. One other important aspect to understand about, specifically for teaching kids, is, and this is something that, for home study, especially for homeschool groups or online groups, or again, supplemental training, kids learn by doing. Humans are meant to mirror image other behavior. It's one thing to be able to tell a kid something, it's another to actually stand alongside them and do it, okay? So there's two pieces to this. Is one, helping to be able to demonstrate the behavior. So moms, dads, you may as well just sign up for class and train with your kids. It's a blast. Get that underhook.
Oh no.
And then over, and then over, and then over, and then over, and then over. But two, it will help them get better at seeing behavior. You're not going to learn quite the same way from a video screen, and sometimes it takes more than once a week, twice a week to get fluid in certain movements. But also don't be too hard on the kids, because as they're growing, my youngest is 12. His balance is all over the place because the kid is growing like crazy. I think he's grown like 4 inches over the last year. So his balance is just catawampus anyways. But one of the things that we still focus on stance. That's probably the number one thing that at this point I tell him is focus on stance, posture, then balance, and everything else follows after that. So again, mirror image with the kids, break things down, and just repetition. So first, I like to say, and a number of other folks tend to say, that martial arts, any martial art, any fighting art, regardless of whether it's karate, boxing, Muay Thai, classical jiu-jitsu, all starts here. It all starts with the feet. Wrestling starts at the feet. Brazilian jiu-jitsu matches start standing up. So everything is important. Everything about the way you stand is important. One of the first things that you learn as a new karate student is obviously a bunch of different information being thrown at you, but one of the first things that you start learning are stances. Very common stances are a forward stance and a back stance, sometimes a cat stance, sometimes a natural stance. All of these things all of these stances have two things in common. And even in other fighting arts where it's kind of a more natural stance, all of these arts have two things in common. One is body alignment of shoulders and hips perpendicular to the ground. Two, some form of bent knee. Three. And then three, the weight on your feet is anchored in your toes. If the weight is on your heels on either foot, then you're not as balanced and you're not as agile or prepared. So for new karate students who are learning things like Zenku Tsurachi, forward stance, you should be able to pick up your heel fairly easily on either foot, and anchor your toes to the ground for your balance. And things like forward stance, your front knee is over your front toe. Notice my shoulders and my hips are still perpendicular to the ground. If I change my stance to a back stance, back knee is over the back toe, front knee is in line with the front toe, but my shoulders and hips are still perpendicular to the ground. And a shikodachi and a horse stance, same thing. Hips, shoulders anchored to the ground. So it's very important to understand that the weight transfer happens in the toes, and this is where the fighting arts begin. You know, without good footwork, it's really hard to make everything else follow. So I would say that if you're new karate mom, new karate dad, new karate student, work on understanding, work on playing with that weight distribution, and just get comfortable with shifting back and forth on your toes. Keep your body aligned. And of course, what would a dad jitsu video be without my uke, my kicks? Okay, so obviously in karate, one of the things that we learn a lot of different kicks. A ton of them out there. The mechanics are generally the same. Again, the kicks are, you know, and regardless of whatever fighting art, that with kicks that you pick, certain body mechanics are going to apply. And again, the weight distribution's in the toes. You kick on heel, you're going to fall off balance. So you're kicking on a toe. So whether you turn your foot first or whether your foot turns in line with in synchronization with your body. Anyway, so when you're learning kicks, so in karate, most kicks begin at what we call chamber. It is a really good time for young students to learn how to stand on one foot. And this is what I do with my students, is I will have them stand on one foot, hands up in the air, you know, fighting position, whatever. Some schools teach it here. Regardless, the idea is that you want to isolate the lower body from the upper body. So do something with your hands. My preference is always to keep your hands up, but focus, number one, on balance. Balance happens when toes, hips, shoulders are properly aligned. The knee should be slightly bent. If you straighten it, locks out your knee harder. So bend your knee, get the shoulder, hips, toes in alignment. Be able to raise up on your heel, off of your heel. Okay. You know, rock back on your heel, you lose your balance. So a nice little game to play is to encourage your student to do heel raises, and it burns. So they'll complain about it. It's fun. Sorry, birds. So again, you know, toes, hips, shoulders, you know, get that additional exercise of lifting your heel off the ground. Okay. The way I teach kicks to my classes, almost always break them down into three basic parts. First is raising the knee. Second is doing the actual kick. And then third is bringing the foot back either in front of you or back behind you. Initially, I don't focus so much on the bottom foot rotation, but the bottom foot rotation is important as you start to develop the fluidity, because that allows you to open up the hips more for more reach. And it's a good idea to get this in sooner rather than later. But the first thing to focus on is that balance. Again, it's the connection to the ground. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. I teach kids in pieces, so 1, 2, 3, and when I want them to go at in one motion, I count in Japanese. So count in whatever your preferred language is, but for my students, I use this as an audible cue that we're going from breaking things down into pieces. 1, 2, 3, to ich, ni, san. So we use that as a cue that we're putting things together. It's important to take things piece by piece and focus on being able to isolate body movements and then put things together. Last thing I'll say is don't force it. You know, let them go at their speed. Sometimes encourage them, but if they say, hey, I'm not really feeling it today, just like anything else, you know, there's a fine line between practicing and maintaining proficiency and pushing too hard. And you know, with anything, we want our kids to be able to learn to love something for themselves rather than learning to love something for us. If you have any comments or questions, please let me know in the comments. If you like this video, please hit the subscribe button wherever it is. Give a like. You know, mostly I do this channel for me and my son just because I like seeing the progress. But if I can help other parents and other martial artists out there along the way, then that's even better. Hope you found this informative and enjoyable, and have a wonderful day. Thank you.